Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am Madden Gaming, and I have some more EA news I'm going to be reacting to. These are some of the new changes that's going to be in Madden 23. I do not have Madden 23 yet, but can't wait to get it, and I can't wait to see it if I notice these changes that's going to be in this video. Without further ado, let's hop right into it.
Madden 23 just officially released everywhere yesterday, but we've got some more info on new things that are coming to the game and also a good bit of new things that they didn't actually promote but are in the game right now. And a lot of these things we're going to talk about are things that a lot of people have asked about, and also a lot of things I think people will be interested in for sure. To start this one off, we got to talk about the thing that I've been asked about the absolute most, and it is a very good question. Where are the alternate helmets that were just revealed? The NFL almost never loosens up the jersey restrictions, but they're finally starting to get to that place, and now we have a bunch of teams in the NFL that have revealed alternate amazing looking helmets, but they're not in the game yet. Well, a couple of the EA devs over on Twitter said that they are coming very soon, and they anticipate most, if not all, will be in the game around the time that the NFL season starts, which would be about anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks from now. Now, the main developer that works on the equipment said that the NFL would not allow them to actually create the helmets in-game before they were revealed. And I know in the past the NFL has had some restrictions like that where they wouldn't allow EA to start putting something into the game. Even though the game wasn't even coming out yet, they wouldn't let them put it in the game until they officially did all the reveals. I don't really know what the reasoning is for this other than they don't want it to somehow get out, because if they show the EA team what they look like, I guess there's a chance that somebody on the team could potentially show it to someone else, who could show it to someone else, and then it could leak the big surprise. That's really the only thing I could think. And when it comes to the NFL, you'd be surprised at how strict they actually are when it comes to Madden. I mean, they're the reason that helmets popping off aren't in the game anymore. They're the reason that stadiums can't get half empty. They're the reason that holdouts aren't in franchise mode. They think those things are bad looks, so they won't sign off on them being in the game. So if the NFL says you gotta wait, then you pretty much gotta wait. But it sounds like they've been working on them and they should be in the game very soon. And we all want that, because when we're on the field, we want to rock the best looking stuff, and that includes the alternate helmets. And really quickly before we continue, if you are enjoying the video and you also want to always stay up to date with the latest Madden news, make sure to subscribe and turn the bell icon on. I'm just here to make sure you guys are always up to date. I don't want you to miss anything. The next thing we got to talk about are a couple of bugs that they did address already, like the stretched numbers on next gen. So you will notice that they kind of changed the body archetypes and they changed the jerseys a little bit, and you'll notice that some of the numbers look kind of funky on next gen. They stretch out a little bit too much and they look kind of warped. They said that that was a visual bug and that's going to be fixed very soon, I would think in the first update or two. I think to some degree they are supposed to look more stretched and more realistic, because when you watch a player in real life, their numbers aren't always looking perfect on the back of their jersey, because the jersey's getting wrinkled up and scrunched up and they're playing the game. But there's just some instances where it looks actually way too warped, and it clearly is a visual bug, so they're getting that fixed. They also did release a roster update over the last couple of days, basically just keeping up with the latest transactions as teams are cutting players. Teams added a bunch of undrafted free agents and things like that, so more of the team rosters should be a little closer up to date. And of course, once the final 53-man rosters are out, they're gonna always have that up to date when that time comes. They also mentioned that a bunch of face scans are coming to the game within the first update or two. Usually with the rookies, for some reason nowadays, there's not a bunch of them in the game at launch anymore. They usually come shortly after. And they've talked about that sometimes they just don't have the same access to players that they used to before COVID for some reason. And also some of the star players like a Fred Warner or a Darren Waller, some of these guys that have been in the league for years and they still don't have their scans, a lot of times it's because they just don't have access to the players to actually get them scanned. Whether their schedules just don't meet up or the teams are just not allowing enough access to the players during this time of year because they're getting ready for the season, sometimes it can be hard to get specific players in the game. Usually what they try to do is get as many players as they can at the combine or like at the Pro Bowl, for example, when there's a bunch of players in one place at one time. But when you have players that are skipping the Pro Bowl, or you have players that maybe didn't go to the combine and then they wound up being like a really good player years down the line, sometimes it's hard to get those one-on-ones if you can't get them at one of these big events, because the team is not always going to allow you access to certain players because they're playing and getting ready for a season. And in the off season, if the player just doesn't want to go out of his way to get scanned, then they just don't get scanned into the game. Now, my only question with that is, in 2022, is there not a way to use like actual pictures to put at least a more realistic scan in the game? I'm pretty sure there is. I know that their system doesn't work that way. They actually do only physical scans to try to make them the most accurate, but I feel like having a backup system would come very much in handy there for players that they just can't seem to get a hold of. Now, let's talk about some franchise mode changes that were revealed by one of the former devs on Twitter a few days ago. These are things that are active in the game right now, but they just weren't big features, so they weren't promoted. But in my opinion, they should promote literally every little thing, especially for a franchise player, because the little things matter sometimes more than the big things. So one of the first things he said was that they updated the contracts for fantasy drafts. Not only are the values higher, but the lengths make free agency viable even in year one. Salaries roughly 175 million in year one. And then he put out a spreadsheet showing what the length and the salary would be based on which round they were drafted in. And I think the idea here is, I don't know for sure because I don't play fantasy draft franchise, but I think the idea here is to make it more manageable and make free agency more viable, whereas in the past, if they just kept their same contracts, I think maybe people were running into issues there, but I don't know 100%. If you know, then just drop that in the comment below. The next change was the wide receiver route runner archetype has been replaced by playmaker. This archetype emphasizes yards after the catch and ball carrier moves to represent guys who are elite after the catch, even if they aren't as elite before the catch. So the route runner archetype is no more, so you don't have to be a nasty route runner to get the playmaker archetype. But I believe if you are a really good route runner, you will also get the playmaker archetype, but it's just more so, I guess, a well-rounded archetype. So if you only meet one of the criteria, whether that be a good route runner or just a good yak guy, you can still kind of fit into that similar bucket. The third franchise change he revealed was that they limited the extent that players can upgrade physical attributes. Previously, you could get +3 speed, +3 throw power, etc. for a career. He said that was tuned down to be +1 to be more realistic, which is pretty realistic. When guys come into the league, whoever they are physically typically isn't going to change that much over the course of their career. Their speed is kind of their speed. They could get a little bit faster, but you're not usually going to get significantly faster. Same with like vertical jumping and agility, right? You can work on that. You could get better at it. But typically, you're not going to make these drastic improvements and be a completely different guy in that department. The fourth change for franchise he revealed was that every ability is available to either ability slot for players to create a better mix and match of skill sets. They also have become more balanced with higher overall thresholds for the stronger abilities. For QBs, for example, the best abilities are gated in slots 3 through 5, and you must be an X factor, which is always good. More customization, more ability to mix and match and kind of make players play the way you want them to play in your franchise. That's what franchise is about, is creating your own story, developing these players the way you want to develop them, but also gating certain abilities and balancing them to where you actually have to work to obtain the more high-end ones, I think is always a good choice. Franchise change number 5, they created better criteria for end-of-year dev progression, especially for defensive positions, and for quarterbacks being among the worst in INTs, even with great passing numbers, will no longer grant them dev increases. So just because you're throwing for a lot of yards, if you're throwing a lot of interceptions like Jameis Winston a few years ago when he went 30 for 30, you're probably not going to increase in dev, which does make sense. And one last interesting nugget he dropped that I thought was cool was with the new draft class generators that now allows you to find more generational prospects throughout the years, he said that they molded some after former real life generational prospects. So you might be able to find someone that's kind of identical to Michael Vick, for example, in one of the future drafts. So I think that's pretty cool. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you want to know more about everything that
That, I'm not gonna lie to you, that was very interesting. And a lot of them are franchise mode, which I do on my channel, but I don't get too in depth on it, like the fantasy draft thing. I'm not really into the fantasy stuff, but it sounds really cool. And everything else, it sounds like like I said before, Madden 23 is Madden 23's year. In my opinion, this is gonna be the best game in years. I know I'll be seeing all the time people nitpick and do this and do that. It's like, if the game good, the game good, alright? Like, damn, it ain't gonna be perfect. Ain't nothing in this world perfect. But you want to nitpick over something that 2% people. You know what? Not even gonna get into it. Well, that's it for me, guys. See you guys in the next one.